and she came to see me.
Right to the DA.
And I have 2 buckets of red.
For what?
I bet this is about vandalism. Who took the light bulb? Window. Here. Okay.
Bottom line.
The filthy language that you heard that I showed. It was a language that I showed in the video. She used the filthy language.
Bottom line.
Why she use the filthy language? She comes home.
You can get a nervous breakdown.
I'm videotaping for.
So what do you want me to do? I'll take it in because it's hilarious.
She doesn't laugh. She's wow.
Gets me to the point.
She's violent.
That I won't deny.
Yes. That's on
There's
videotape.
no way. You know, someone
Take a picture. And she comes
in the morning,
and then she yeah.
Show it again.
Mr. Larkin. Mr. Larkin.
Pants stuff.
Hey, you're
You're kind of stuck here, though.
We've been here for years. We're not moving. We have lovely neighbors.
she's been for the
Say something.
go to
No right to have the action. Hanging it on full floor.
why did you move from Harris?
Did you move? You didn't like your
Why
I lived in Harris.
So
In Harris.
West Harris.
Right.
Why
Longview Avenue. You moved into it.
why did you move from
What's about
every year?
Diana, you're doing a good job in peace. I'll tell you.
Look a lot here.
You're doing a good job.
This car. What goes on? Ask other neighbors who's really. Oh, she's starting to pick on a new neighbor now. The kid down there.
That's a lot.
You put in the letter. Right, we have a. She's starting with that. They want to speak to the dog. They want to stay.
Said neighbor 2D called me no lady. This is the foul talking sister. This is the foul talking sister you saw on videotaping.
This is the crazy one.
Yeah, this is and this is all over.
Get some other.
7 News have nothing else to do. I mean, Well, when you reduce the
You better put that camera down, woman.
Go ahead, tell me what I'd better.
really
Okay, it's a threat.
In a way, it's fine. Fun. This goes on, you see, this goes on 24 to cable TV. And she's
Calling
trying
your
to kids are brats, they're left like orphans. People are working, these babies, they're old enough to handle being after school.
There goes that
I mean, he's 16. What is the problem? He calls the man's job up and tells us the chief of police officer, children alone. I mean, hard-working man, and so is his wife. What are you doing? My nerves. Do you think that this doesn't get on my nerves every day for the last year?
you guys have gotten out here together.
She does. No. She does this all the time.
Cameras are still.
Never been out.
19.
And we got some very interesting calls. One man said, I can't see why you're making such a deal over a small amount of money. It turns out that he's a lawyer, and it turns out that he's done work for Scott Lord, but then practically every lawyer in Long Island has done that. And so I sounded him out, and he was obviously a pro-Scott Lord. He perhaps was a plant. His name was Edward King. And he left his number and his address. So that was just sort of a come on. And another man said, Glendora, you're the wildest. I'll call you. This is left on my recorder, my telephone answering machine. I will call you at some time next week when we can talk. He said, Scott Lord is a major bum. I am going to go to the Westbury bankruptcy court and complain. Keep up the good work, he said to me. And now about the administrative claims. We still haven't heard from Mr. Feeney. Mr. Feeney is in the executive office of the United States Attorneys in Washington, D.C. So I called him again Friday morning. So I called him again Wednesday morning, October the 6th. And he says that they've turned it over to the tort group, to the tort people, the people who examine torts. And that's just another way of saying nothing has been done. So remember, these people have 6 months to either answer or to deny, and if they let 6 months go and they haven't answered, well, you just take it back to Judge Cattell, the whole thing, and sue them. Now, did Scott Lord make his final payment? His final payment to the trustee on the bankruptcy case, the judgment against him for $14,000, was due October 3rd. By October the 6th, 1993, Wednesday, the trustee had not received that payment, but he had received assurances from Scott Lord that it would be in the mail. This is the final payment. Glendora asked the trustee, Richard O'Connell, would then he go about the distribution and get this thing over with. And Richard O'Connell said no, that he would not close anything until the lawsuit was over. He has said that before. And Glendora said, on what basis would you do that? And he says, well, I said, what rule is that? And he really sort of vaguely stumbled around and really didn't come up with a rule. So we got to see if the trustee is allowed to do that. October 5th, Tuesday, was the date that Richard O'Connell went before Judge Hall in the bankruptcy court in Westbury to argue his case to resettle the stipulation with Scott Lord from $12,000 to $14,000. The trustee, I should have been there. I should have been there to support the trustee, but I just didn't make it. And so I asked the trustee what had happened on October 5th before Judge Hall, and the trustee said that he made his application and that he said the application was supported 100% by creditor Glendora, that no other creditors had appeared, and the judge granted the application of the trustee and said to the trustee, submit an order, and which the trustee will do, and then Judge Hall will fill in the date and sign his name. That will be the end of that. So Richard O'Connell got what he wanted. The trustee, Richard O'Connell, told me that he read a lot from my affirmation in support of his application, but that he fell short of reading paragraph 2, where Glendora said to Judge Hall that you have to give Richard O'Connell credit, that he was the only person that Glendora had ever known personally to collect money from Scott Lord, and that Glendora had admitted that to the trustee that you're a better man than I am, Gordon's gin. The trustee said he didn't read that to the judge. Decided to get out the telephone numbers and addresses of other lawn sprinkler companies in Long Island and other numbers in Long Island that we used to call practically every week back in 1990, 1991. So we decided to get them out, majorly to notify them that the program was on Channel 25 on Cablevision across the island. And Glendora talked to a lawn sprinkler company who has been a good source of information over the years, and he tells Glendora that Scott Lord has parked a new Atlantis lawn sprinkler truck in black and white in front of his home on Ocean Harbor Drive. We have to give the trustee credit that he did call Glendora, really on his own. Not really, he was asked to several times, but finally he did call and he did answer the questions and he did give the information. So you have to give trustee Richard O'Connell credit for that. And I think that just about does it on what happened with Glendora versus Scott Lord, Jan Stahl, Jeffrey Barnes et al. I better start reading you this et al. Who are these people? On the week of September the 27th, 1993. The et al. Is Conrad Duberstein, Judge Conrad Duberstein, Robert John Hall, Andrew Maloney, Harold Jones, Neil Mann, former United States trustees, Teresa Kavanaugh, the current United States trustee, Richard O'Connell, the panel trustee, Joseph Derby, Marshal for the United States, Scott Lord, Jan Stahl, and Jeffrey Barnes. This is what happened to the Scott Lord, cut 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here is what happened with Glendora versus Ganett, Broder, lawsuits 2 and 3, and what happened on the week of September the 27th, 1993. A log went out, a huge log went out. It is something like 18 pages, and it covers the time from August the 12th, 1993 to October the 2nd, Sunday. The time on Broder this past week was 6.5 hours. And the log must have cost about $25 to mail with all of the postage. Another important thing that happened this week is that Glendora talked to Arthur Ox Sulzberger, the owner of the New York Times, and he liked the joke very much, whatever it was, can't remember. And Franklin went to the United States District Court and looked into the file of the Glendora versus Ganett Broder, and they have the same thing in their file that we have in ours, except that they have an affidavit of service, which we do not have, so we got a copy of that. And then Franklin went up to the chambers, Judge Broderick's chambers, and asked how much longer or how long should a thing like this take. See, the return date on that was I think it was September the 20th. Return date on that was September 20th for the judge to take it down and look at it and make his decision. So we asked, could we have an idea of how long that would take? And Franklin was told, it depends on how busy the judge is. It could be 10 days, it could be 10 years. You do remember that Judge Hall in the United States Bankruptcy Court took 1 year to decide whether to vacate Scott Lord's defaults. It took 1 year to make that simple decision. So we'll see. On DHCR, the Queens DHCR line is busy. It's busy before the office opens. It's busy all the time the office is open. It's busy after the office closes. Something's going on there. So we haven't talked to anybody at the DHCR. On the first DHCR case, Judge Coppola has not signed the order yet. And I'm against that. He should sign the order because it's a bad decision he made, and I cannot appeal that decision until he does sign the order, until I get a written notice of entry of that order from the DHCR. As far as the second DHCR case, William Street DHCR, Stephen Cohen, etc., Judge Coppola, the return date on that was September 15th, so he has until November 15th to make that decision. So there's no news on the DHCR this week, the week of September 27, 1993. I got to tell you a joke here. You've gone all this time without a joke. The woman was complaining to her friend, I spent $150 in the supermarket yesterday. And her friend says, that's terrible. And the woman says, yeah, and I was in the fast checkout lane. Now, on Glendora versus Lydia Gallicano et al., here is the new New York Supreme Court Appellate Division book, the instruction booklet. And the other one was very good, and this one has a few improvements. And it's available on the table down in Brooklyn in the lobby where the clerk's office is. About Glendora versus Lydia and Larry Gallicano on the illegal rent, which was before Judge Ruskin. Here is the brief, and Glendora sent the brief to the appellate division clerks to have them look it over and see if it was all right. Isn't that a nice brief? Well, they made 2 changes. This had to come out of here. They don't like anything in the middle like that. They want the caption to be just as it was on the original papers. And they don't want any newspaper clippings. These clippings bore out what I was saying, that the White Plains Building Department and the mayor and Philip Amicone were ignoring illegal occupancy. And so the newspaper clippings soon after that showed that this is what Glendora was talking about, and Glendora was right. So we had to revise that according to the wishes of the appellate division, and I will read you the brief. But before I do that, here is the record. And this has been approved by the clerks, but now we find out that they want this taken out. So we'll just take that out. That is the record. Those are all of the legal papers that were filed on the case. So now let's go. This is the New York Supreme Court Appellate Division, 2nd Department, Glendora Plaintiff Appellant against Lydia Gallicano and Larry Gallicano. Westchester County Clerk's Index Number, Glendora Pro Se, and the Appellate Division number. It does have a number now in the Appellate Division. This is the action. The index number and so, and the full names of all original parties, and the action was commenced in the Supreme Court, Westchester County, and the action was commenced by service of a summons with notice and a complaint on November 10th, 1992. And you know all about that. And the first thing you have to do, that's the statement according to pursuant to CPLR 5531. It just gives the progress and the dates of all of the legal action. And this is the table of contents. And then you have to put down argument, point 1. There's no point in reading the points, it just tells you what page they are because I'm going to read you the points when I read you the paper. Now this is page, the first page. And it, a preliminary statement, plaintiff appellant Glendora appeals to this court from an order and from each and every part thereof denying the motion of plaintiff appellant to dismiss defendant's respondent's cross motion, to award plaintiff appellant $20,000 for illegal rent charges and for negligent infliction of emotional distress. And here are all the questions involved. Well, that's just the points put in question form. So you're going to hear that. I don't think I'll tell you the statement of facts because I think you know that. You've heard that before. But it is in concise form for the judges of the appellate division. So good, this brings us up to page 7. And here starts the argument. Point 1, it is not legal that a landlord should collect rent from a house registered as a one-family and illegally rented as a two-family. The court should protect citizens against this type of greed on the part of landlords. Further, the court should protect their citizens, their darlings. Remember, we are your darlings, from building departments so derelict in their responsibility, guarding the citizens' building safety. Glendora showed Judge Ruskin 3 statements by the White Plains Building Department that 40 Longview Avenue, White Plains was classified as a one-family house and was being rented illegally as a two-family. These are included 4 times in the record on appeal. That's the big book I just showed you. This is blind justice. Judge Holden in White Plains City Court also chose for self-interest to ignore the same. Plaintiff Glendora takes exception to Judge Ruskin's not fulfilling his mission championship of justice. These justices write these lofty opinions, and in the end, they make their decisions by the seat of their pants. Point 2, it is not legal that a landlord should collect rent from a house that had no certificate of occupancy 50 of the 52 weeks Glendora lived there. What is the raison d'etre of a certificate of occupancy, CO abbreviated, in a building department if a place can be rented without a certificate of occupancy to certify its safety? Why should Justice Ruskin condone such a violation? Glendora takes exception to this ruling by Justice Ruskin, and after 50 weeks when the CO is issued, it is only a substitute CO. And Justice Ruskin is permissive about that. And further, Justice Ruskin lets the fact go by unnoticed that the CO was no good anyhow because it was issued without any inspection by the inept White Plains Building Department and its commissioner, Philip Amicone, and his boss, Mayor Alfred Del Vecchio. Justice Ruskin chose to ignore this point amply made by plaintiff Glendora. Point 3, it is not just that Glendora should not be awarded default judgment when defendants did not answer the summons with notice and complaint within 20 days. That summons with notice and complaint was handed personally to Lydia Gallicano on April the 14th. 20 days was May 4th, and defendant's answer should have been in Glendora's hands May 4th, then and only then. Further, that answer was notarized to have been posted May 4th by somebody outside of New York State, by a woman in New Jersey. See the record. Justice Ruskin was blind to both of these defects. Point 4, it is not right that a Supreme Court justice should condone the illegal and greedy machinations of landlords. The Supreme Court is there to detect injustice and to stop it. Justice Ruskin did neither. It is unjust for a landlord to rent illegally a one-family house as a two-family. It is unjust that a landlord should rent illegally a building that has no certificate of occupancy and that has not been inspected. Justice Ruskin should not condone this blatant greed. This one got by Justice Ruskin in the Supreme Court. Then newspaper was packed with stories about illegal occupancies and the harm they were doing to people. The mayor's newsletter devoted 2 pages to illegal occupancy. Point 5, it is not right that Judge Ruskin cops out of his court by dumping the case into White Plains City Court. Could you please tell me what is the meaning of this statement by Judge Ruskin? The cross motion is granted because all of the monetary issues between the parties were or could have been decided by the City Court of White Plains in the non-payment proceeding decided by Judge Holden in a decision and order dated February 9, 1993. What does that mean? What in plain Anglo-Saxon terms does this mean? First, his name is Judge Holden, not Holen. This shows, one, how well judges read what law clerks put under their noses to fill in the date digit and sign their name. The defendants and their son-in-law lawyer, John Orenberger, should never have brought a case against Glendora and White Plains City Court on the same matters that were already before Judge Nicolai in Westchester, the Supreme Court, and before the appellate division in the second department, CPLR 3211A4, the $200 September 1992 rent and the $1,050 October 1992 rent. Defendants and their son-in-law lawyer were wrong to bring these same matters into White Plains City Court, and Judge Holden was wrong to ignore Glendora's affirmative defense saying so. An action for $20,000 illegal rent was not before Judge Holden. It was before Judge Ruskin himself. See the record on appeal. Point 6, it is not right that a Supreme Court justice fails to hand out justice. In high school civics class, Glendora was taught that there were laws, courts to carry out these laws, and judges to decide what was just. In the grown-up world, Glendora finds that our state Supreme Court is benched by hollow black robes who do not have any judgment, who do not mete out justice, and for which there is no remedy. The lack of judgment and justice perpetuates itself ad infinitum. Judge Holden totally ignored the proof himself. Judge Holden totally ignored the proof he himself requested from the White Plains Building Department that Lydia Gallicano was illegally renting a one-family house as a two-family house. Glendora submitted these 3 documents substantiating this. Glendora is appealing in the appellate term every part of Judge Holden's order. Justice Ruskin's statement in his order is not sufficient, is not Empire State, and should be reversed by the appellate division along with every part of his order. Point 7, it is not right that Supreme Court justices should be pro-landlord, pro-lawyer, and pro-administration, and anti-tenant, anti-pro se, and anti-individual. Landlords inflict green Glendora invokes the courts for protection and redress. Then the courts rule in favor of the landlords. This makes more injury. Instead of justice, every time Glendora gets double injuries. A justice should not be pro-landlord, no matter what his personal background is or what his political background is. In this case, mayor of the city of New Rochelle, a justice should not be pro-landlord. Nor should a justice be pro-lawyer and anti-pro se. Even Administrative Judge Angelo J. Ingrassia admits publicly in print that he is anti-pro se. He is quoted in the Ganett Reporter Dispatch as follows: "Every judge has a couple of pro ses on their calendar," said Richard Farina, Law Secretary to Angelo J. Ingrassia, Chief Administrative Judge of the 9th Judicial District. One of the first things we learn in law school is a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. Westchester County Judge Joseph K. West said, "It's like me going to a medical doctor and he says you've got a such and such and I say I'm going to treat it myself." Well, in many cases you'd be much better off treating it yourself. "I try to make sure they know what they're doing," Ingrassia said quite frankly. "I manage to talk them out of it most of the time." This is pro se's, Angela, who is the administrative judge. A person has a constitutional right to defend herself, and you can see in Westchester Supreme Court that the deck is stacked. You lose even before you get ripped off $245 to buy an index number and an RJI. Pro se is stamped on your forehead, and dismissed is stamped on your hands. Point 8, it is not Empire State that landlord in White Plains Building Department should fail to keep a lodging safe for tenant, yet collect rent for the same. Our government and our courts are not supposed to maintain building safety for our citizens. Is this what our founding fathers had in mind? Is not building safety a basic? Isn't it a duty? Isn't it to be expected? Isn't it a right? No, Westchester Supreme Court judges always rule what is best for the judges. They always rule against the person who gets ripped off and in favor of the person who rips off. Point 9, peripatetic point. Like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, the wandering on foot philosophers, this is a peripatetic point wandering around in my mind. The point is Justice Rustin's cavalier dumping of Glendora's cause of action, negligent infliction of emotional distress. This is not an injury to be dealt with. This landlord's record of law-breaking, unsafe dwelling, and illegal rent is not a personal injury. Is not a personal injury in the surrounding circumstances of this greedy landlord Lydia Gallicano, making tenant pay landlord's Con Edison charges, usurping willfully, designedly, and maliciously tenant's garage tenant was paying for, flagrantly breaching tenant's warranty of habitability, recklessly ruining tenant's right to have and to hold and peacefully enjoy, repeatedly committing acts that intentionally alarmed and annoyed and harassed this tenant. Conclusion. For all of the foregoing reasons, the order of Judge Alvin Ruskin should be reversed and plaintiff's motion granted and defendant's motion dismissed. Please read my papers as the judge in the lower court did not. Please give me justice. A tenant should not be abused by a landlord and get away with it. What happened here was not Empire State, it was rinky-dink. Give me something good to say on television about this New York State process. Quote, it is the best system in the world, unquote. Judge Joseph West keeps telling his courtroom filled with jurors to be or not to be selected. But I have yet to be convinced. Believe me, the best way to monitor courts is to be a litigant in that court. Then you really find out grade 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of efficiency and capability. Please grant my motion for summary judgment for damages of $20,000 plus interest plus costs. Again, please read my papers. I do not see how you can read my record and my brief and not see that flagrant wrong has been done. Me. Dated White Plains, New York, September 21st, 1993, autumnal equinox, 7:25 p.m., Glendora, box 532, Scarsdale, New York, 10583 914 949 9495. Well, there's still a couple of things in there that have to be changed. So we move on. And what is this? This is the record on appeal for that case in loose, unbound form so that it can be copied 9 times at a cost of something like a couple of $100. Costs you about $700 for an appeal. Meanwhile, the record on appeal for Glendora versus Lydia Gallicano, punitive damages, Con Edison, before Judge Dennis Donovan. This record on appeal has been completed. Now, one copy was bound and sent to the clerks of the appellate division for them to look over to see if anything's wrong with it before we pay $200 to have it copied. Okay. And this already has a case number. So there that is, and that's 152 pages. So the record is done. The next thing to be done is the appellant's brief. And here's the title page. And here's the statement pursuant to CPLR. Seems like there's something else. Nope, that's it. So that's where we are on Glendora versus Lydia Gallicano. And here is the joke of the day. The Maine farmer had some people come to see him, and there were only 4 chairs, and the guests were sort of embarrassed, too embarrassed to take any of the 4 chairs. So finally one of them got up enough courage to say, I think we're short of chairs. And the Maine farmer says, no, plenty of chairs, just too much company. 222 people, what happened at 21 Greenridge Avenue on 9/27/93 week. Mailing number 27. 9/27/93 Monday, harassment number 290, 5 p.m. Roberta Walsh could see that Glendora was videotaping, so she pounded as hard as she could on the mailboxes in the hall. High decibel metallic sound. Number 291 harassment. 20 minutes later, she did it again. Number 292 harassment. A baseball cap that had been burned partially was sitting on the roof of Glendora's Lincoln. It had been very carefully placed there. 6:27 p.m. Glendora noticed it. Number 293 to number 313. Roberta Walsh keeps putting litter at Glendora's door in the hallway. Litter. Roberta Walsh keeps putting litter at Glendora's door in the hallway. Number 314 to number 315, 2 pairs of pants have been stolen from the cellar. We are back to another crime of old, thievery. There was our doormat, our geranium plants, our tomato plants, our avocado plants. The plants were hanging in the cellar over in the corner by our bin. The pants were hanging in the cellar over in the corner by our bin. A person would have to go out of her way to get them. Prime suspect is Roberta Walsh, as she was the one for the doormat. It is 1 p.m. and this has been a time of peace. It took an hour yesterday to videotape for TV what happened on September the 20th, 1993 week. Bob, our dog, is just like one of the family. Ed. Yeah? Which one? No garden next year. It is too much work. It takes too much time. It is fun, though, to see them grow. 3:05 p.m. James Walsh, much voice noise and visitor with him, the same noise slamming the door up and down the stairs. 5:39 p.m. Nella Candy Alpucci blew her horn 8 times. Audio tape 485-1. 8:12 p.m. Nella Candy Alpucci blasted her horn 12 times on the same tape. This brings the harassment up to 200. This brings the harassment up to 317. 2 hours today on wall. September the 28th, 1993, Tuesday, 7:22 a.m. Nella's sister comes speeding north on Greenridge, blasting her little car horn twice as loudly as she can. Number 318, it is a baby horn. The car is so little. 9:07 a.m. Glendora on the Porzio recorder asked him if he went to the 100% tax assessment meeting at City Hall last night. Told Porzio he did not answer Glendora's emergency calls of Friday. Glendora will interrupt her current series on TV and will start putting the Wall documentary on TV. Roberta in the laundry room a lot. Sergeant Fitzgerald, please call. Sergeant Fitzsimmons, please call. Quote, she's in with the chief, unquote. Glendora wrote the wraparound, a TV term for commentary between video clips for the first chapter 1, Glendora versus Walsh, Alpucci, and Larkin, Wall. It leads off with the violent, obscene harangue of Candy Alpucci of September the 24th, 1993, Friday at 5:15 p.m. It is disgusting. The next one is a similar low-class harassment of June the 23rd when Glendora and Franklin were trying to load the Lincoln with videotape equipment. The next one is Candy's sister, June the 23rd, when Officer Coyote came and told them, then you'll get arrested. These people break laws left and right. It is so dumb. The fourth one is Roberta Walsh harassing, calling Glendora for no reason at all, and it goes on. 7:30 p.m., Franklin discovered more vandalism. The bin lock had been jammed, or maybe jammed. This is the second lock that has been vandalized in the cellar and the third lock in all. The first one was crazy glue in the front door lock, which cost the landlord $92. Number 319, harassment. It cost $26 to post the what happened log of September the 20th, 1993 week. Somebody has to pay for that. It is time to sue these lawbreakers. September the 29th, 1993, Wednesday, Franklin called Porzio and told him about the pants that were stolen from the cellar. not just the pants, but the two clip hangers, and about the vandalism of the bin padlock. Franklin called the police about the burglary and about the vandalism. Officer O'Donnell came. He is very interested in this case and pays a lot of attention to it. Glendora has sent him a log every week for 2 hours. He likes the jokes. Glendora spent 3 hours videotaping the wraparound for the videotape clips wall, Chapter 1 for TV. 6:40 p.m., Nella Candy Alpucci blew her horn, harassment number 320. Roberta was making willful and designed noise on the stairs, number 321, the Alafine stomps up the stairs. 8:30 p.m., a candy wrapper carefully placed outside Glendora's door, making harassment number 322. It was a Twix. Prime suspect is Roberta Walsh. This has happened 9 times before. Mental disturbance law. No letters were returned this week. September the 30th, 1993, Thursday, 50 degrees. The apartment was cold. 7:18 a.m. Candy Alpucci's sister again breaking the law, beeping the horn twice. They do not seem to understand what a car horn is for. They do not seem to understand a lot of things. It took 3.5 hours to get the hasp off, to get the lock off the hasp, and to buy a new lock. Cost of the new lock was $5. Somebody else will be paying for this. There was a lot of undue Walsh noise, Roberta and James. They just grow older, they never grow up. 1:50 p.m., James home with a visitor, undue noise, White Plains noise ordinance. When Roberta saw through the window that Glendora was videotaping, she repeated her routine of banging the mailboxes, going up and down the stairs the elephantine way. 3 p.m., Roberta blew her horn twice into Glendora's dining room window. 3:30 p.m., Kevin, James, Chinese boy, playing football in the back outside Glendora's window, defying the landlord. Then they went around to the front and played on the lawn, defying the landlord. Don't play in the back. Don't play on the lawn. 3:50 p.m., SAS leader Kevin Larkin, as Glendora and Franklin walk out of the building and to their Lincoln, carrying the video equipment for editing at TCI. Kevin Larkin says, guys, the circus is leaving town. That's harassment number 324. Glendora videotaped them. They fled. Roberta called from her sentinel post on the second floor kitchen window, snarling something. Glendora videotaped that. All of this harassment and mental disturbance of another tenant are grounds for eviction, Mr. Porzio. Page 3. The law-breaking of Walsh, Alpucci, Larkin at 21 Greenridge Avenue. As we drove off, Glendora videotaped the 3 offenders on the lawn. At 6 p.m., 4 to 6 p.m. were taken by other editing of the TV program and making of archives. Not until 6:30 p.m. did Glendora start program number 1320, Chapter 1, Glendora versus Walsh, Alpucci, and Larkin. The opening was first, then the countdown, then the slate, and a warning. Children should not watch nor listen to this program. The Candy Alpucci excerpts were there so vile. The video editor left the control room while they were being laid down. He was that disgusted. So are we. Intent to annoy and alarm, insulting and abusive language. Again, note that we never speak to these people. The situation is sickening enough as it is with their speech. We do not speak to them before these things happen, while they happen, nor after they happen. It is best. October 1993, Friday. The apartment is too cold. It is 64 degrees inside and 45 degrees outside. Sergeant Fitzsimmons is not in. 10:15 a.m., she is in with the chief. 4th call this week, not returned. Franklin picked up the police reports. Glendora had 3 close encounters with Daniel Walsh, all very fine. Glendora was working in the garden, helping the plants adjust to their pots. Daniel Walsh walked by on the sidewalk and neither looked nor said anything to Glendora. 20 minutes later, he walked by again, going back, looked at Glendora, said nothing, but did go, And that is a quote. Somebody had been mean to Katie Cat while we were away this afternoon. She was a freaked out kitty. Glendora worked an hour trying to get her calmed down and to get her to come in the house. She was so scared she even went across the street. Finally, Glendora went out at 8:34 p.m. and Kate was hovering on the kitchen windowsill. She was pathetic. Glendora got Kate into her arms tightly and held onto her securely and went as fast as she could up the stairs straight for the apartment door before Kate could squeal away in her fright. As Glendora started up the stairs, Daniel Walsh started down the same stairs. We passed on the stairs and were contiguous. He made a mouth sound, no word describes, but at least he did not speak. Good, this is improvement. October the 2nd, 1993, Saturday, typing the log, apologies for the typos. Glendora's program in Nassau County last night elicited many phone calls. Just think what the first chapter of Wall will do when telecast on TCI, 21 towns in Westchester, and later on Cablevision in Harrison and Port Chester. Insert, Glendora talked with Janine Pirro at campaign headquarters. She shows the year. She shows the where, folks. Janine was on Glendora's show in 1990 at the Harrison Republican Picnic. Glendora also wrote several court monitoring reports on Judge Janine Farrell's Pirro. Insert, Glendora is reviewing the audio tapes for Wall evidence and putting it onto videotape for the TV documentary. Insert, Roberta Walsh put litter at Glendora's door about 12 times. The letter from 2D. Insert, Kevin and the black boy. Insert, Kevin and the black boy, Andrew, were noisy for hours Wednesday. Now here they are, the police reports. What a great record they do make. Page 4, Glendora versus Walsh, Alpucci, and Larkin. What happened 9/27/93, week 21, Greenwich Avenue, police reports. This police report is by Keith Martin. A call of two youths. Swearing in the hallway at 21 Greenwich Avenue was received. I spoke with Glendora Buell, who states that two youth males were in the hallway at 21 Greenwich Avenue and were cursing at her, calling her, quote, B blank 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 H blank. I spoke with the youth and one parent. All appears to be resolved at this time. And the minute the policeman goes away, they start again with the abusive language and the insulting language. Saturday, it is far from resolved. The next day, the same two youths and the same parent were breaking the laws again. Harassment, willful and wanton conduct, intentional infliction of emotional stress. This time it was the Pepsi commercial 9 times on videotape and will be part of Chapter 2 on TV. Glendora has to go to Nassau County this morning and take a workshop on TV production. They are fun. In 42 years of television, Glendora knows a pile of TV production. But there is always something new in this fascinating field. The workshop is given by Cablevision of Long Island, the world's largest single cable TV system, 400,000 subscribers, owned by Glendora's friend Charles Dolan. All right, this is Harry Pino, and this report is on the 24th, Friday. The complainant reports she is constantly being harassed by the neighbors, Nella Alpucci, apartment 4B. She says Alpucci's sister blows the horn loud in the morning to annoy her, and Nella makes obscene gestures at Mrs. Buell. 5 hours. She repeats that this is an ongoing problem. September the 24th, 1993, went on a report, this is Jay First, went on a report of a youth complaint. On my arrival, I spoke to the complainant, who stated a group of youths keep harassing her. She was advised of the procedure for harassment complaints. Yeah, you take them to the detectives. The detectives do nothing. They're supposed to go to the assistant attorney, district attorney, Garetto, and he does nothing. This officer may have been a rookie. The more experienced officer, a tall, thin officer, number 91, I believe, started talking to Walsh and the other offendants before coming in to see the person who summoned the police. Glendora went outdoors and stated to him that she had called the police. These people had not. Then 91 came in. He did not participate in the report, and after 2 minutes walked out of our apartment and went to his cruiser parked in the front yard and sat. This is on videotape 3H. Officer first spoke to the offenders. The woman from 2D and Chelsea Dog were in this one. Nothing was accomplished. James Walsh, the black boy, Andrew, the Chinese boy, and the blonde curly-haired boy were worse than ever. An hour later, Glendora summoned the police again. This officer did a lot more than most. His name is Houston, badge 161. He saw the videotape of the blonde curly-haired boy harassing, doing the Pepsi commercial under our window, running up and down our window, shouting, annoying and alarming. Officer Houston told the boy who denied he did it. And the officer said to the boy, "I caught you cold. I saw it on tape. So you want me to take you to the youth division?" The boy said no. Officer said he would if he did anything more like that. Soon after, this boy left, and he's never been back since. He had harassed 3 days in a row, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. He has not been seen on the property since, but he will be seen in Chapter 2, Outrageous Behavior. He was a guest of James Walsh and Roberta Walsh, who stood by for 2 hours and condoned this 12-time harassment of another tenant. In the past, Roberta has used her son, James, for harassment purposes against Glendora. Now, Officer Houston's report wasn't in yet, and so we're going to have to read that to you next week. This officer got a promise out of these people that they would not bother Glendora anymore. Now, this is good. Houston said, "They will comply with your wishes." Well, let's put it this way. Glendora had a right to be left alone, a right to not being disturbed, a right to not being harassed. That is everyone's wish. This officer sat in his cruiser on the west side of Greenwich, 4:50 p.m. to 5 p.m., when Candy Alpucci's sister came barreling south on Greenridge and beeped her horn. Glendora went out to the officer and told him about this repeated harassment. The officer was angry at this horn blowing, got out of the cruiser, and went to the front yard. Candy Alpucci's sister said to him, "Hello, Brian." The officer did not arrest for horn blowing. He said thank you, went back to his cruiser, and 2 minutes later drove off. This was all the same day and hours that the terrible accident at Mamaroneck Avenue occurred and the man was killed. If Walsh, Alpucci, and Larkin would cease breaking the law, the police would concentrate on important matters. Daniel Walsh, Roberta Walsh, Candy Alpucci, and the woman in 2D hung around aimlessly for another 20 minutes. One by one they left until Nella Candy Alpucci stood alone. Then Nella came to our south bedroom window, worked until she got us to look at her because the windows were down, and made an obscene gesture. By now, Nella Candy Alpucci had lost her audience and retired. In retrospect, Glendora should have arrested both Nella Candy Alpucci at 5:02 p.m. and turned them, and the sister, and turned them over to the police, Houston, since the police were right there. That's the thing to do next time, a citizen's arrest, since Glendora has witnessed these violations, and do the arrest in the presence of the police. And here's another report. Also, Glendora learned she can make a citizen's arrest in writing with corroborating witnesses. Back to Officer Houston. After he left and before the crowd broke up, Candy Alpucci looked at Glendora, who was videotaping, for evidence. "I have freedom of speech," Candy said. "That gives me the right to call her a motherless F blank 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 G blank 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 D O blank 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 bag." And this is the harangue that leads off Chapter 1 of the Wall videotape. The next police report follows. This is Officer O'Donnell. And on 9/29/93, I responded to 21 Greenridge Avenue concerning a larceny of pants. Mr. Buell states that sometime between 9/25/93 at 8 a.m. and 9/26/93 at 5 p.m., an unknown subject removed 2 pants 1 men's, 2 summer pants, and 1 ladies from a pipe from a pipe in the basement by the storage unit area. The pants are estimated at approximately $20. Mr. Buell also states that the storage unit padlock was damaged sometime between September the 25th, 1993 at 8 a.m. and September the 28th, 1993 at 7:40 p.m. Possible that the lock was glued shut. Estimated damage to lock approximately $5. And the damage to the time was 3.5 hours. And also the hangers. The hangers were worth about $5, the pants hangers. The prime suspect for this is Roberta Walsh. She's in the basement a lot doing laundry for hours at a time, days at a time. She was the one Glendora heard in the basement Sunday and Monday. She was the only one around when the crazy glue went into the front door lock. The 1.5 hours in the morning, the day that happened, when Glendora came home and found the lock ruined and went in through the south bedroom window. And she was around the cellar the day the first lock on the bin was jammed. Back to October the 2nd, 1993, Saturday. At 9:20 a.m., Franklin went out to look for Ginny Cat and Katie Cat. He found our garden ravaged. He came in and called the police. The police came. A new police officer, 90, Hockman, and Harry Pinto again. They asked who owned the property. Glendora said a Japanese development company in Manhattan. They asked the court of the two. They asked the cost of the 2 tomato plants that had been brutalized, $4 apiece. They asked the cost of the 5 patience plants that had been brutalized, $2 apiece and $10. Glendora told him this vandalizing had to be done between 7:30 p.m. Friday night and 9:20 a.m. Saturday. Our prime suspect is Daniel Walsh because he saw Glendora working hard in the garden Saturday at noon, and at noon 20, he passed Glendora, close encounter, 8:24 p.m. Friday night on the stairs. When Glendora was gone, was rescuing Katie Cat. The police were here 5 minutes. They should have gone to 3A and questioned Daniel Walsh and Roberta Walsh. The second man went by with Chelsea. The 2D man went by with Chelsea dog. Glendora watched him intently, so intently that the police turned around and looked at him. Glendora and Franklin were until 10 a.m. repairing what they could of the damage to the patient's plants as much as they could. Brought in the plants that were all watered, and the sticks were piled very neatly. Then her car across the street. Then, just as they were leaving the garden, Nella Candy Alpucci walked by to her car across the street and said, "Nothing, this is suspicious. Why did you forego an opportunity to harass and be vile?" Then we cleaned up the kitchen. Then this log had to be written. At 10:25 a.m., Roberta Walsh came down the stairs. Glendora opened her front door. They had eye contact for 15 seconds in silence, and then Roberta snarled something. Glendora reached for her recorder. Roberta went on her way. Now we will have to watch these people near our things to see if we can't catch one of them in one of these crimes. The time is 11:12. The time is 11:12 a.m. Time on these lawbreakers today is 4 hours. At noon, Glendora drove to Long Island and had the workshop for 4 hours. What a great thing this is. There is over $2 million worth of studio equipment, video equipment there. 3 cameras, the mic system, the audio board, the switcher, the monitors, the character generator, the videotape recorders, all 3/4 inch, the studio, the sets, and the lighting. There were 7 of us. We all had our turns as host, guest, technical director, audio engineer, character generator, camera person, stage manager. It was great. It was all in beautiful color. October the 3rd, 1993, Worldwide Communion. So far at 2 p.m., this has been a day of peace. The job today is to close this log, make the master copy, print it, fold, stuff, and seal, and post. The time on Walsh, Alpucci, and Larkin this week is 16 hours. The joke of the day is Marilyn is so dumb that she thinks Gatorade is welfare for crocodiles. This is a letter to Mayor Del Vecchio, and it's dated September the 30th, 1993, Wednesday, to Mayor Del Vecchio and Philip Amicone. Glendora told you all this was going to happen, but you wanted to ignore it. This is Mayor Del Vecchio talking about the dangers to the citizenry above illegal occupancy. And this was the fight that Glendora had with Amico and with Mayor Del Vecchio. Illegal occupancies are dangerous. Dwelling units illegally converted to accommodate more people than they were originally designed for. That was just the issue at 40 Longview Avenue. Have not been inspected for safety. That's another issue at 40 Longview Avenue. White Plains is a great place to live. There are always fun activities for residents and visitors of all ages, but we have illegal occupancy. Glendora told you all this was going on, but you wanted to ignore it. Now, since it is election time, you want to act like heroes when really you are more like tortfeasors. At first, Glendora thought the White Plains Library acted badly because of their own bad management. Then she noticed how badly the White Plains City Courts were run. Then came the building department and all the hiding and running away by Philip Amicone. Then came the queer way the city clerk, the mayor, handled Glendora's right to address the common council and the mayor. And now there is something ineffectual about the police department. As you said at my church Sunday, September the 19th, maybe it is time for a change. Okay, this is Glendora to Mayor Del Vecchio and Philip Amicone. Now you see, this is in Contact, the mayor's newsletter, and here's 3 pages about all the dangers of illegal occupancies. And Glendora says, since the summer of 1992, we have tried vainly to get the story of 40 Longview Avenue to City Hall and to have some effective action. Franklin wrote this. There was no certificate of occupancy, then in some obscure way there was a certificate of occupancy without any inspection. City Hall, led by the mayor and Philip Amicone, couldn't seem to come to grips with a blot on housing. Our efforts for a safe city of good housing were disregarded. Philip Amicone refused to come to the telephone for calls, refused to see and talk to us when we came to the building department. We told you about the 40 Longview situation at the town meeting, interval preceding the council meeting. Nothing ever happened. Your department head was as inaccessible as ever. This chapter raises doubts about the sincerity of the election time attention to illegal occupancies. There has been too much inattention in the past. In Contact, the mayor has this column. We want to hear from you. At first, Glendora says, I thought it was just the library management that was so bad. Then I found out the building department was inept. Then I found out you can't go before the common council and address your government, and that the system was bad. Now I find the police department does not do its job. Then I find out the White Plains courts are screwy. 1 year, 3 weeks to try a small claims case. The Del Vecchio administration is bad and has to go. Now we have a little harassment. Page 2, page 3, page 2, and page 3. That's Lawrence Tisch. Paragraph 8, not only does CBS not keep the law, they manipulate and pressure not to pay the taxes that others would have to pay. Lawrence Tish Wright, chairman of CBS, discusses the network's decision yesterday to remain in New York City for another 15 years. This was a deal between Tish and Cuomo and Dinkins, and that CBS will stay in New York City for at least 15 more years in return for a $50 million package of state and city incentives. Now, you have to pay your taxes, right? But if you're CBS, you don't have to do that. The network, which was founded in the city 65 years ago, will keep 4,000 jobs in New York City and spend about $300 million to convert its facilities for high-definition television broadcasting. And that will take 10 years. So, they get $6.5 million worth of city property tax abatements and a pledge by the State Power Authority to cut the network's electricity bill by $12.2 million. Now, you have to pay your electric bill, right? No, but you're not if you're CBS. So that's the deal. Now, paragraph 9. This is a company that does not pay the taxes it should. We have today a television that CBS tried to keep from us. We have an alternative television, and we have public access. In public access, people know the meaning of the statement, these are the public's airwaves. CBS had greedily usurped the airwaves for decades for their own. And, of course, the courts support CBS because the courts buckle to them. Glendora will have the last word. The last word will not be spoken by CBS, nor by the courts. And Lawrence Tish can see Glendora's program both in his apartment in Manhattan and in his house on Island Drive in Rye, because the Chat with Glendora is in all those systems in Manhattan and Westchester. And this is another decision from the Westchester County Supreme Court showing no thought, no deliberation, no justice, where the date digit is automatically filled in by the judge with his signature, and again the judge complies with his law clerk. These judges are led around by lawyers like Jacobs who crank out these computerized motions to dismiss. They say the most outlandish, inapplicable things and know they will win because they are CBS and because judges always rule against pro se litigants. It is stacked, it is rigged, it is premeditated. That paper Jacobs wrote was embarrassing. It was so remote from what the case was about. It was pathetic, but judges always fall for this. The next thing to sue CBS for is antitrust. The way they discriminate with their airtime prices, the way they contract for a certain price, and if somebody else comes along and gives them a bigger price, they preempt you, the way the prices for the same time and the same numbers vary from salesman to salesman, and a whole lot more, monopolizing. CBS has no respect for the public's airwaves. And apparently, neither does the Westchester County Supreme Court. Glendora will certainly challenge the renewal of WCBS TV license July the 1st, 1994. With prejudice is right. The prejudice against pro se, little people, and people in the right. The courts always favor the cheats. Honest people never win. Judge Rosado does not deal with the issue of the other negligences. They were listed and were not dealt with. On CBS paper stated no defense at all. It went off into etheria with not a thing that gravity could hold on to. Then both of them, on the same side, CBS and the judge, digress into breach of contract, which is not an issue at all. But this saves them from dealing with the issue at hand, negligences. Maybe someday Glendora will get a judge who can read and who will read her papers. Beth Bresson and the senior vice president of sales and the executive vice president did communicate the malice to several people. Glendora said so in her argument to Judge Rosado. But of course, he did not read this. Judges do not do their homework. And this judge took an extra 5 weeks, not to do his homework. Day after day, Glendora rang the chambers and the office near the courtroom, and day after day, there was no answer. 9 to 5, day after day, there was no answer. Nowhere does the judge nor CBS dare address the malice. Nowhere does CBS nor does Judge Rosado deal with the audio-taped evidence. It is totally ignored. And of course, the two of them being on the same side, with prejudice, quote unquote, eschew the heart of the matter, which, the audio-taped evidence, makes pellucid. It is unconstitutional to say that Glendora, as an American, has no right to address her government to correct a wrong. Glendora can address the FCC as an individual and will. These are not CBS's airwaves. These are the public's airwaves. But CBS has stolen them for so long that judges get transfixed and perpetuate the thievery. It doesn't matter. The court wanted CBS to win from the beginning. There is no correlation between justice and the Westchester County Supreme Court. Justice never has her day in court in Westchester. Glendora found this old clipping from Broadcast Magazine in her 1988 file drawer. Beth Waxman-Bresson, General Attorney, Labor and Employee Relations, Law Department, CBS News, has been named to new post of Vice President, Legal Affairs, CBS News, reporting to Howard Stringer, Division President. CBS fails to get pay from cable TV. The other networks made deals with cable TV, but CBS failed to. This decision shows no thought, no deliberation, and no understanding of the issue. It is as circuitous and as ethereal as the motion CBS made to dismiss, and it is 1 month and 1 week illegal. Lawyers like the CBS Jacobs can write any rubbish because they know the judge will rule what is best for the judge. In this case, it is best for the judge to be on the side of the big CBS, the big guy. Such is the decision with no order of this plaintiff. And here is what happened with CBS and cable TV and retransmission. And Glendora will take her protest to cable TV on a type of television CBS denied the public for years, public access. When you treat badly, this is what you deserve. And this all happens at a time when the courts need support, not agitation, at a time when its chief judge was sentenced to 15 months. Paragraph 40, I want to tell you about one court session I monitored in Westchester Supreme Court in the spring of 1993. The jury was sent out of the courtroom. The plaintiff's lawyer wanted the jury to know that the plaintiff had been to the doctor 3 days ago, and the doctor had said plaintiff's injured hand wouldn't ever get better. The county's lawyer protested the inclusion of this event on grounds plaintiff's lawyer had not told county lawyer this first. See, everything is all stacked, you know. The judge was in a quandary for a while. Finally, the judge told witness doctor not to mention the plaintiff had seen the doctor 3 days ago. The judge said to the doctor that if the doctor was asked if a doctor saw the plaintiff in the past 3 days, to say no. The doctor said, okay. How much more crooked can you get? Where is justice? Where is ethics? This is telling a witness not to tell the truth. The judge told the witness not to tell the truth. This is a judge telling the witness not to tell the truth. And the jury was brought back in, and it was never mentioned that the plaintiff saw the doctor within 3 days. And here's another one I saw happen in Judge Rosado's courtroom in May of 1993. The legal aid attorney for a young black was trying to show her evidence that the detective who arrested the black had tenuous testimony, and believe me, he surely did. I couldn't believe a thing that detective would say. Every time the legal aid attorney put up a good cross-exam, Judge Rosado stopped her, called a sidebar, and made her withdraw her questions. It wasn't fair. It wasn't just. The legal aid attorney came back and said, I withdraw my questions, all in front of the jury. This is not what courts are supposed to be. Get all the facts out and let the jury decide. Glendora, end date, October 2nd, 1993, Saturday. Now, folks, I cannot remember. All right, son. Now, folks, you knew that we made this complaint, this claim against the City of White Plains for the negligence of the 2x4 left in the entrance to the library garage up against the curb, and it punctured the tire. And it cost $40 to get a new tire, and it took 6 hours. So we made the claim against the City of White Plains and they passed it on to Gallagher Bassett up in Spring Valley. And Gallagher Bassett, who was very disagreeable to deal with, denied the claim and said go to Acasella, who was the contractor that the City of White Plains had hired. And Acasella didn't want to have anything to do with it. They tried to get out of it. They said they didn't know anything about it. So we went down there one day and we served them a copy of what we'd given to the City of White Plains and what we'd given to Gallagher Bassett. And we told them they were served. And the man down there named Robert said he didn't want anything to do with it. And we said, you're served. Well, that got everybody out of the office who wasn't answering the knocks on the door. And they said, did you serve something? And we said, yes. Well, then we called up Acasella, they're down in Eastchester, and we called them up about 4 or 5 days later, and the attitude had completely changed, and they had referred it to their insurance agent. So what do we got now? We got it's been past the buck White Plains, past the buck Gallagher, past the buck Acasella. So we call up the insurance agent, who is Bruin, B-R-U-E-N, up somewhere in Brewster, and we ask them what's happening, and they say it's being processed and you should hear the end of next week. All right, the end of next week came, we called up and we says what's happened, and they says we passed it on to the Continental Insurance Company up in Glens Falls. So there's the buck passed again. Well, yesterday, October 5th, 1993, Tuesday, the Continental Insurance Company in Glens Falls, a woman named Saracino called and said to tell her what had happened. And Glendora said, you know what has happened. We have sent you a report. We've sent you 2 copies of that report. Well, what has happened? The report is right there. Why don't you read what has happened? No, we want to hear you say it. So I read the report to her. And she said, was this 2x4? I said, there were 2 2x4s. Out in the street or in front of the sidewalk. And I said, at the entrance to the library garage. And she said, were there any men working there then? No. They had all gone home and left the place a mess. Then she said, we will award you $40 for the tire. Okay, we thank you for that. But there's a lot more that you would have to award me for, and that would be the time, 6 hours of time. She says, where do you see that? I said, that's on the report. That's right in front of you, paragraph 9. 6 hours, $200 an hour, is equal to $1,200. She says, oh, well, why is it $200? I said, that is the rate. And she said, then you'll have to send us an IRS form. And I said, no, the IRS says never do that, that these forms are confidential. Well, she said, then you have no claim. And then I said, who is the CEO of Continental Insurance? She says, Mr. Gutschel will have to call you. And I says, Mr. Gutschel is not the CEO. Mr. Gutschel is a claims agent. She says, I'll have to talk to you through my superiors. And so that's where it stands. Now this morning, October the 6th, Wednesday, I talked to the law office in White Plains, and I always keep them informed as to what is going on. And the person in the law office says, well, that's good. He says, at least they have admitted liability. And that is the first step. He says, now all you've got to do is come to terms on how much is paid. So that's Glendora on the White Plains negligence, and this is October 6, 1993, Wednesday. Ellen was upset. She said to her friend, I spent $150 in the supermarket this morning. Her friend says, that's terrible. And Marilyn says, yeah, and I was in the fast checkout lane. Now, I'm going to play for you the message that we left on the landlord's recorder on May the 24th, 1993, as soon as Channel 7 left, and Candy Alpucci and Roberta Walsh and Daniel Walsh made these outlandish, insensitive remarks. And here it is.
John Porzio, Channel 7 was here. They went through the White Plains police reports. They found all these reports. So they called up and asked if they could do an interview. Right or wrong, I said yes. And they came here at 4 o'clock. And they interviewed and videotaped and looked at the record and looked at the obscene things that Candy Alpucci has said and done, and Roberta Walsh and also Daniel Walsh, and they considered all the vandalism and all of the harassment. And they left here at 5:30 p.m. And every time anybody comes to see me, Daniel Walsh has to horn in and has to butt in, and every time the police come, he has to go see the police after when I've called the police. And so now he goes over and he butts in on Channel 7. So I went over and I videotaped and I audiotaped the whole thing. And the whole thing was an altercation on the street outside of 21 Greenwich Avenue, all from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Finally, the Channel 7 van drove off around about 6:30. Now, when we're trying to come back into our home, Roberta Walsh said to Franklin, "You are a sick, sick man." Franklin did not say anything. And Candy Alpucci said, "You could have a heart attack, you could die, and then where would Glendora be?" John, these are the kind of people that you have in this building. I think it's time that you evicted these 3 families. The time now is 7:48 p.m., 1993, Tuesday, October 5th. Franklin, do you want to add anything?
No, I would just corroborate. I would corroborate all that Glendora said. They certainly twist the truth and are just mean-spirited people, apparently wishing everybody the worst. That's it, John.
October 5th, 1993, Tuesday night, 7:50 p.m. Glendora and Franklin to John Porzio on his recorder. Today is
this next recording is to the White Plains Police. It's very, very interesting. And I believe this happened somewhere around October the 6th, 1993.
morning, sir. Could you have an officer come to 21 Greenwich Avenue?
For what reason, ma'am?
A theft.
Theft of what?
Of the $5 light globe.
$5 light bulb?
A light globe.
From what?
Where was it?
Yeah.
It was outside of our bin in the cellar.
Outside of your bin?
Bin, yes, storage bin.
You see who took it?
No, but I have a prime suspect, Nella El Pucci. She was here in the hall just before it was missing.
This is 21 Greenridge?
Yeah, I'm a...
Hold on, please.
Time is 8:15 p.m., 7:43 p.m. And I talked to Darlene a long time. She's never seen anything like this. So childish.
What apartment do you live in?
Number 2A,
Phone number?
949-9495.
What's your name again?
Buell.
What is it?
B as in boy, U-E-L-L.
First name?
Glendora.
Glendora, we'll send an officer over, but it's not going to be until after 8 o'clock.
Oh, after 8? Okay.
Is that alright?
Yeah, I'd rather have Keith Martin come.
Keith Martin's not working.
Oh, okay, thank you,
Would
officer.
it be possible for you to come in here to headquarters?
Sure. So, you mean now?
Come in here to headquarters to the night window, and we'll take the report at the night window.
Oh, you mean now?
No, whenever you want.
Take it in, why?
Would that be possible?
Well, I'd really have to work that one out on account of every minute today is occupied. You had in mind for, it certainly wouldn't be myself, but it might be my husband. You had in mind for him to come down there and make out the report at the night window?
Well, if that's possible, ma'am. If it's not possible, we'll send an officer to you. If it's not possible, you would rather just have us send the officer after 8?
It's an interesting concept. How long do I have to think about it?
You have as much time as you want, ma'am. You can call me back, you can do whatever you want.
Of course, you'll be gone today.
No, I won't. I'm here until 4.
Oh, okay. Give me a chance to think of it. What was your name again?
I'm Shield 645. Name is Zumpano.
Zumpano?
Right. You can give me a call back, Glendora.
Okay, thank you. Bye. That's an interesting thing.
I was just because my plane's police, Mrs. Zumpano.
Yeah, Officer Zumpano, I did think about this. I would rather have the policeman come because I would like to show him the scene of the crime.
All right, what is this, Glendora? Somebody took your light bulb?
It's a light globe. It's more than a bulb. It was a $5 light globe.
All right, we'll have him come back after 8.
Yeah, so that's my point there. Although, if there's something else that isn't like a scene, I will consider your offer to come there in person.
Okay. See you there after 8.
As I say, it's an interesting concept. Thank you. Time is 7:46 a.m. Officer coming after 8:08.
Please make a message on the back as soon as possible. Thank you.
Hello, pretty blue eyes and blonde.
Officer did come, and it was Officer Houston, and he's very good. He's very good. He doesn't mind working, and he doesn't mind doing things, and he's really interested in resolving disputes. So he took the information on the bulb that was stolen. It was a decorator's bulb, you know. It was a big bulb, such as you have in a dressing room, in a TV station, for instance. I mentioned to him that Nella Alpucci's sister called him by name when he was here on September 24th, 1993. She said, "Hello, Brian." And he says, "Yes." He says, "I've known her for a number of years. It goes way, way back." He says, "I haven't seen her for a long time." He says, "And I do intend to speak to her as a friend." You know, it's Nella Alpucci's sister who comes barreling south on Greenridge Avenue every morning. It's 20 after 7, and blasts her horn anywhere from 6 to 14 times, which is nothing but a harassment. Intent to annoy, intent to alarm, with no legitimate purpose. And it's bad, you know, to harass myself, but also in doing this to disturb the other neighbors. There's 16 other families in this complex. It's such a childish thing to do, and it's a law-breaking thing to do. You know, if you're going to fight this thing, then you don't have to break the law. Every time they break the law, we keep from breaking the law, but they should not break the law. And you have to stand up to that. Here is another announcement to the landlord. He's a very good landlord. And it's really tough to find a good landlord, but he's really good. Okay.
Hi, John Porzio. Last night, Sunday night, at 8:30 p.m., somebody was banging the mailboxes, which is a favorite game around here, to bang the mailboxes. And so this time I opened the door to see who it was. Guess who it was? Guess. It was Nella Candy Pucci. What is she doing over here in this building, in the hallway, banging somebody else's mailboxes, or even touching them? So before that, she had let out one of her expletives, B-U-S-T-I-N-G. You know what the rest of it is. And when I opened the door, she let out another one, F-U, as you know, lunatic. And then this morning, I discovered that our $5 light bulb, the round light bulb, the lamp, the globe, outside of our cellar bin, is gone. So she's my prime suspect. I hope you're well, John, and keep your courage flaming. Today's joke is a woman's riding along in a taxi cab, and she says to the driver, "Can you back up 1.5 miles?" He says, "What for?" And she says, "I'm $1.50 short. Take care."
I'm right in the middle of a whole bunch of stuff. I got your note, and we'll look at it seriously. We really will, but I can't.
This call was on the recorder Tuesday morning. It came around 9:30 p.m. Monday night. You might like to hear this.
Time 7:30 a.m., and it is Monday. This call was on the recorder last night.
This is Broder Williams. I'm at WABC TV, and I'm trying to reach Glendora Bureau. And I'm looking at the right number, and my number is 212-456-3123. If you can get in touch with me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
That's in response to a green call, I think. John said to his son, he says, "I don't care if we got a crack in our basement wall or not. I don't want you telling people you come from a broken family."
Anthony, these people up here are...
Hello? Hi, Diane.
No, she's in the office today, but she is in a meeting at the present time. I'll leave a message for her as well.
Of course.
Okay.
Oh, thanks a lot. Did you hear about the gardener's exercise program?
No.
You start out fresh as a daisy and you end up bushed.
I love it. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Now, folks, I'm going to play you the conversation between Diana Williams of WABC TV and Glendora. It was on October 5th, 1993, around 2:30 in the afternoon.
Good afternoon, 9495.
Hi, Glenny.
Hello.
Williams with WABC.
Yes.
Yes. I'm calling because I understand that you have had some problems with the neighbors, and we're working on a piece about people who have problems with their neighbors.
this right? True? Yes?
Who called you? Who told you this?
Nobody called me. I went through police reports down at the White Plains Police Department.
Did you know me? Hi.
9495. Hi, is this, B&B? No. I'm sorry, I have the wrong number. Okay. 10:40 a.m. B&B. October 5, 93 Tuesday. Beautiful Friday. Good afternoon, 9495. Hello. I'm calling because I understand that you have had some problems with the neighbors, and we're working on a piece about people who have problems with their neighbors. Is this right? True? Yes?
Who called you? Who told you this?
Nobody called me. I went through police reports down at the White Plains Police Department.
Okay. So tell me what your project is.
We're doing a series for WABC TV on neighbors who have problems with other neighbors. And we're taking a look at mediation services that people have used that has helped resolve the problem.
Now, Diana Williams, tell me who you are. What do you do? Are you a reporter?
I work with WABC TV.
Are you a reporter? Are you a producer?
I have my reporter and an anchor here.
Okay.
If you watch the 11 o'clock news, I sit next to Bill Butel. You ever watch Channel 7?
Yes, but not at 11 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
At 11 o'clock, I'm in bed.
Sometimes I sit next to Roz or Greg, too.
Good for you. I'm glad you've done so well. And you've got so far. It's a very hard business. I'm in the television business, too.
So do you have any problems with your neighbors, or am I,
Well, what tipped you off to White Plains? How come you happen to be looking at the police reports at White Plains?
I picked a community, random.
You picked a community at random. And you went down there and...
Yep, and police reports are public record. Freedom of Information provides us with police reports.
Yeah. And so how did you find all of these? And what ones did you find?
Well, I can't tell you the other ones I found. Yours just popped out, though, because you have found several police reports.
What would you propose to do as far as...
Well, I mean, you haven't told me that there's anything here yet, so I don't propose anything at this point.
Well, if there were something there, what would you propose?
We would want to do an interview on camera.
Up here? In White Plains? Tell me more about it.
Well, first of all, can you tell me a little bit about, your situation with your neighbors? Because basically at this point I'm just talking to people trying to find out who's...
Have you talked to anybody else here?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people so far.
A lot of people at 21 Greenwich Avenue?
No. A lot of people for this story.
Yeah, a lot of people for the story. No, I didn't mean I'm specifically and exclusively interested in 21 Greenwich Avenue.
No, I'm just calling you at this point.
At this point, you're just calling me. Okay, now what is your question, Diana?
What's the situation with the neighbors?
What is the situation with
Ongoing problem, or is it resolved, or
Well, the problem started on Easter Sunday, 1993. There was 4 hours of breaking of the White Plains noise ordinance, disturbing the neighbors. And it was done by Brian Larkin, Kevin Larkin.
What kind of noise was it? Was it music?
No, it was voice noise and ball bouncing noise, and screaming and hollering.
Okay.
Theo L. Pucci, Neil L. Pucci.
So some teenagers?
Brian Larkin and Kevin Larkin live in apartment 1C. Theo L. Pucci and Neil L. Pucci live in apartment 4B. I live in apartment 1A.
Okay.
James Walsh lives in apartment 3C. It had a considerable mental effect upon my husband. And he asked them to stop. And they did not stop. The next day was Monday, and after school they started up the same thing. This time they had invited 4 outsiders. And so I began to videotape it because I could see that there was a problem coming and I had to have the evidence. So I videotaped them out of my bathroom window. When I began to videotape them, they became very abusive and very retaliatory. And Mrs. Alpucci pounded on our door, and Mrs. Walsh and Mrs. Alpucci called the police that night and said she's videotaping us, which of course is no offense of any kind. And so they really didn't have a cause of action, and from that moment to now, we have never spoken to these people because things are at a very bad pitch. And if we had spoken to them, it really would have been quite serious. Was serious now. So then began a long campaign of retaliation and harassment. And this is intent to annoy and intent to alarm with no legitimate reason. And this retaliation took the form of vandalizing our garden 4 times, pulling up our plants and stealing our plants and stealing the pots. The front door lock had crazy glue put into it, and that cost the landlord $92. The cellar bin lock was jammed, jimmied once, jimmied twice, and our $5 globe above our cellar bin door has been stolen. Our doormat has been stolen. We continued to videotape these things, and then came an onslaught of insulting and abusive language, which is also a broken law.
You have that on videotape?
Oh, lots of those. You couldn't put them on the air, though. They are really vile. You could not put them on the air. But we have a huge videotape of it, Diana. We have 4 hours on videotape.
Have you gone to court yet?
No.
So how are you going to resolve this?
You'll have to put that question aside for the time being. We have the police, we have given the videotapes to the police. We send out a report every week of every violation, the time it occurred, what it was. And we circulate this to 22 people, the 16 families in this complex, to the landlord, to the Harrison Police, and to the White Plains Police, and also to our minister, because Andy Alpucci called up our minister and asked him to intercede. So that is the report. If you cared to come here, I would show you 27 reports that have gone out every single week.
I'd like to see it. Can we come by this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. It takes us about an hour to an hour and a half to get out there.
Yeah, why don't I give you the easiest directions?
Well, yeah.
Well, all right, you know where the police station is?
Yeah.
All right, that's Lexington, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're going to come off the Bronx River, aren't you?
Yeah.
And go past the police station.
Okay.
All right, go past the police station and past Post Road, Route 22. And the next light is Maple Avenue. And you turn left. And you go, the second traffic light is Greenridge Avenue. You make a right. You go 1 block. We are at the corner of Greenridge and Rutherford on the left-hand side. Number 21, Greenridge Avenue. Apartment 1A.
And 1A, I assume that's on the ground floor, shut the
Yes.
everything.
Unfortunately, I cannot, excuse me, I made a mistake. It's apartment 2A.
2A.
And fortunately, I cannot offer you parking. There is no parking on the property.
Okay.
But you can park across the street.
Okay. Okay, so Bronx River Parkway, go past police station to Route 22.
Past Route 20.
Past Route 22. Take a left on Maple Avenue.
Yes.
Okay. And
Go 2 blocks.
Okay. Is it 3 blocks or 2? 2. It's traffic. It's a second traffic light, but it's 3 blocks. Okay. All right. Okay. And you'll see Greenridge, and there's a traffic light there. Okay. And Greenridge ends, you can only turn one way. Okay. So we should be there, as I say, hour and a half. Okay, I'm going to tell you today's joke. Okay. Wait, I think I have it on my machine already. Oh, you do? What was it? Not the taxi driver? Yeah, I'm going to tell you another one. Oh, more than one a day. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The boss believes in reincarnation. Mm-hmm. He says, did you ever notice at 5 p.m. everybody comes back to life? Okay, so it's 2:37 p.m. now, and you hope to be here at 3:37 p.m.? Give me another half hour to that. It'll be closer to 4. Closer to 4. Just know how things... And what are you aiming for, the 11P? No, this is first series, so this will be for something in November, probably. Oh, in November? Yeah. All right. We'll see you shortly. Yes. Thanks, Glendora. Bye. You're welcome. Bye.
The conversation was on October the 5th, 1993, Tuesday. There was something I was going to tell you. Yeah, when I told my lawyer about this, about Channel 7 wanting to do a story sometime in November, he said, it sweeps. He's so right. I don't know how he knows all those things. I thought you had to be in the business. Well, as it turns out, he knew somebody who was in the business. And sweeps is exactly what it is. That's ratings week. It's in November, and then I think it's in May. And that's when they go after stories like this, where they think they're going to get a big audience. So this, I guess, my lawyer's right. That's when it is, sweeps. Well, sure enough, folks, they were here, un punto, at 4 p.m. Amazing how they can get through the traffic in Manhattan and get here on time. And I'll just play you as they entered the door. I'm looking for Glendora Buell.
Hi, Diana. Hi, Diana. How are you? Good, how are you? Great. Hi there, big fella. Good, how are you? What are you doing here? Are you doing your cable show? No, I'm trying to you. Oh, okay. Okay. You have some stuff here? Yeah, why don't you make yourself comfortable and move the chairs? Yeah, I'm going to show you one excerpt. Okay. Are you comfortable now? Fine. You look pretty. Thank you. Very pretty jacket. You know what? Is it possible to take this down and get that out of the way? No, that's what this is what I'm playing it to you on. Oh. But you can put it aside. Yeah, because they're going to need to choose some. Franklin, you want to, don't put it too far aside because I have to have it to show this to you. Okay. This is where your footage is coming off of. What's your name? Oh, I'm sorry. This is Kevin. This is Jerry. Hello. Hi, Jerry. This is Buell. This is Franklin Buell. My bitter hat. Bitter hat? Yes. I'm just going to show you. So why don't we get some of this looking at I'm trying to cue this up for you, Diana. Diana, are you comfortable? Oh, yeah. So, you have 4 hours on videotape, right? Yes, Diana. My goodness, you're right on time. You said 4 o'clock, and here you are on punto. I'm going to show you one choice bet. Since December 1st, 1992. Where do you live, in Manhattan?
Well, I proceeded, cut. Well, I proceeded to show her several clips, as bad as they were and as disgusting as they were. The language of Nella Candy Alpucci and her sister. And then I showed him The Noise of the Boys and the Star Spangled Banner and several other clips. The audio man was tall and very good looking, and then there was the cameraman, and she's very good looking. She's blonde and she has blue eyes and she's very well dressed. She had on a really snappy red jacket. So she looked lovely, and a very nice skirt that matched it. And so I went through all of the videotapes, and I really had a hard time getting to concentrate on the actual evidence and the actual what is going on. I showed her about 10 clips, some of the most vile and some of the most violent. Here's an exchange between Diana Williams and Glendora. At one point, she asked me if we had any children, and I said they were noisy and expensive, so we got rid of them all.
Go ahead, Diana. I'll call them over. You go talk to them.
But my point would be, why not put away the video camera and just go out
Because
and
I
have
need
friendly-
the evidence. They are breaking the law. When they break the law, I videotape. If they don't break the law, I don't videotape. It's pretty plain. You know, it's pretty plain what's going on. I videotape for evidence.
It's all done within the house.
Right.
The camera never goes out.
And we never talk to these people. These things happen out of the blue.
In a lot of communities, neighbors get along and they do nice things for each other and they look to each other for support and friendship. And my point is, why not just put the camera away and go out and talk to the neighbors?
Well, you just heard what you said. I don't think I'm quite in any mood to talk to anybody like that who just said those things to me. I don't think so. And I don't think you would be either. And you're up here for a story. You're not up here to,
Do you enjoy doing all this?
do I enjoy doing it? Well, of course I don't enjoy it. You think this is the best use of my life? No. You gotta hear this one.
You understand this has been going on for months.
Sure, but I guess my point would be, there's a better...
Okay, like me to hear this, please?
What would it take to resolve this?
I think that's rather an outrageous question. Do you enjoy this? I don't know. There's something about reporters. I have a hard time trusting reporters. Of course, even before what had happened with Mitch Broder and the Ganett suburban newspapers and Gary Sherlock and John Curley and McCorkindale and Paulson and what's his name who went to Columbus, Ohio. I have a very, very hard time trusting reporters. They seem to have an angle, and their angle always is to find out the worst that they can and to make people look as bad as they can, I would be very careful before you accept an appointment with a reporter. There's only one reporter that I do trust. That's my husband, Franklin Buell, who was a reporter for 37 years. He's a graduate of the Boston University School of Communications. In fact, the very first graduating in 1948, right after the war. He went to there on the GI Bill. And he got his degree in journalism. And he was a reporter for the Springfield, Massachusetts Union, which is a very fine paper. It's connected with the Springfield, Massachusetts Republican. It was bought by billionaire Sam Nichols,